The atmosphere outside the federal courthouse remained tense, as the air seemed to anticipate what was about to unfold. Media representatives positioned themselves behind metal barriers, their recording equipment ready, all waiting for a single sight of the woman at the center of a political storm. Then she appeared. Representative Jasmine Crockett emerged from a black SUV, her heels hitting the concrete with the measured pace of someone who understood exactly where she was heading, even if the rest of the nation remained uncertain. The media reacted immediately, camera shutters firing rapidly as news anchors competed to be heard above the crowd. "She's here! Congresswoman Crockett has arrived." Her attorney whispered something urgent to her, but she remained focused, her eyes fixed directly on the courthouse entrance. The air carried a sharp metallic quality, mixing approaching rain, building tension, and history waiting to be made. She adjusted her blazer, smoothed her sleeve with deliberate calm, and moved forward. Each step carried more significance than the previous one because she understood that what awaited her inside wasn't simply another legal proceeding. It was a moment of truth. Inside, polished marble floors reflected the harsh fluorescent lighting above. Federal security personnel lined the corridors. Conversations remained quiet, uneasy. And as Jasmine passed, heads turned in her direction. Some expressions showed sympathy, others showed suspicion. She was positioned as the defendant today, accused of contempt, of defying congressional subpoenas, of crossing boundaries too many in Washington feared to even acknowledge. But the reality, the genuine truth beneath the surface, was that she wasn't entering that courtroom to mount a defense. She was entering to expose what had been hidden, and everyone from the journalists to the politicians watching could sense it. As she approached the imposing double doors leading to the courtroom, one of the marshals paused, examining her identification with unnecessary formality. She handed it over without comment. The marshal studied the name, then looked at her face. His expression flickered briefly from official detachment to something resembling uncertainty. "Proceed, ma'am." The door swung open. The courtroom was filled beyond capacity. Every seat in the public gallery was occupied. Reporters, congressional staff members, activists, even a handful of senators pretending to merely observe. At the center sat Justice Clarence Thomas, presiding over this extraordinary hearing, something that blurred the traditional boundaries between legal proceedings and political theater. He glanced up as she entered, his expression unreadable, a combination of weariness and quiet institutional authority. Beside him, a thick stack of documents sat untouched. Jasmine took her position at the defense table. Her attorney leaned close again, speaking in hushed tones. "Stay composed. Don't let him provoke you." She gave a small nod of acknowledgement, but her eyes never left Clarence Thomas. For a moment, the chamber was silent, except for the rustling of papers and the mechanical clicking of camera shutters. Then Thomas spoke. "Congresswoman Crockett." His voice rolled through the space, deep and deliberate. "You appear before this court facing serious allegations: obstruction, violation of congressional ethics regulations, and contempt of subpoena. Do you comprehend the nature of these proceedings?" Her response came measured, calm, yet carrying a weight that seemed to settle over everyone present. "I do, Your Honor, but I also understand that what's transpiring here isn't justice. It's retaliation." A ripple of reaction moved through the gallery. Thomas's brow lifted slightly, not in surprise, but irritation. "Miss Crockett," he stated, his tone tightening, "this is not a political platform. This is a federal courtroom." "With respect, Justice Thomas," she responded, her voice cutting through the tension. It became political the moment certain individuals decided that maintaining power mattered more than revealing truth. For a split second, even Thomas didn't respond. Then he leaned forward, fingers interlaced. "Congresswoman, are you suggesting this court lacks impartiality?" "I'm stating, sir, that impartiality died a long time ago, right around the time people stopped being held accountable for the money and influence they concealed behind closed doors." The room buzzed with reaction. Reporters scribbled frantically. The judge's clerk shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Thomas's tone grew noticeably colder. "I will remind you, Congresswoman, you are under oath." "And I will remind you, Justice Thomas," she countered without hesitation. "So are you." That response landed like a physical blow. Even her attorney froze momentarily, his mouth slightly agape. The courtroom murmured, but the judge raised his hand, restoring silence. "Order," Thomas said sharply. "This is your final warning, Miss Crockett. Do not transform this hearing into spectacle." "I'm not the one transforming it into spectacle," she replied, her voice firm yet controlled. "I'm here because I refuse to sign a committee report that would have buried evidence of political payoffs. I'm here because I refuse to remain silent while others profited from that silence." Thomas studied her intently. "Do you possess proof of these allegations?" She reached into her briefcase, extracting a thick folder. The leather creaked as she laid it flat on the table. "I brought it with me," she stated. "Emails, financial transfers, internal memoranda, names you'd recognize." The audience collectively inhaled. Thomas exhaled slowly, his gaze narrowing. "You're treading on dangerous ground, Congresswoman." "I've been on dangerous ground since the day I told the truth," she responded. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Thomas turned to the clerk. "Enter into the record Exhibit A, submitted by the defense." The clerk hesitated, glancing at the judge for confirmation. Thomas gave a curt nod. As the papers were handed over, Jasmine leaned back slightly, observing. Her heart pounded, but her expression remained still. The calm before a storm. Thomas began examining the documents. His eyes moved methodically, line by line. Every few seconds, his jaw tensed incrementally more. Then he stopped. "What exactly am I looking at here?" "The paper trail," she said evenly, "of who's been purchasing influence in Congress and who's been selling it." A wave of whispers filled the gallery again. Thomas closed the folder slowly, pressing his palm against the cover. His expression was unreadable. But there was something else present now. A faint recognition, perhaps even fear. "You understand the gravity of what you're alleging," he said finally. "I do, and I also understand why most people never make it this far." Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably beside her, whispering, "Jasmine, this isn't..." She raised her hand gently, signaling him to stop. "Justice Thomas," she continued, "I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came here because this country can't continue pretending that corruption is patriotism. If that's a crime, then I'll accept the sentence proudly." For a moment, even the judge didn't speak. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Thomas leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You speak about corruption as if it's something new, Congresswoman. As if you didn't choose to participate in the same system you are condemning." "I didn't choose the system," she replied. "I chose to fight it from the inside. That's why I'm here. That's why you're attempting to silence me." He raised an eyebrow. "Attempting to silence you?" "Yes," she said firmly, "because you and I both know that once the truth leaves this room, it won't stop." For the first time, Thomas looked away. His hand moved toward the gavel, hesitating. The cameras captured that brief moment of hesitation before he spoke again. "This court will recess for 1 hour," he announced. The gavel struck, but even as the sound echoed through the chamber, everyone understood this was no ordinary recess. Something irreversible had just begun. Jasmine remained seated as people began filing out, her hands folded, her eyes still fixed on the bench where Clarence Thomas had been sitting. She wasn't afraid anymore, because now the truth was on record. Before we dive deeper into this absolutely explosive confrontation that has captivated the nation, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Activate that notification bell so you don't miss any of the political drama currently shaking Washington to its core. Now let's continue with how this battle unfolds. Jasmine slowly rose from her seat. The marble floor echoed beneath her footsteps as she walked toward the gallery. Reporters were already whispering among themselves, phones buzzing, cameras sneaking photographs even as court officers attempted to block them. Her lawyer touched her arm. "We should exit quietly," he murmured. But she didn't. Instead, she turned toward the cameras, not to speak, not yet, but to look directly into the lenses as if challenging the world to pretend it hadn't witnessed what just transpired. Her eyes communicated what her lips didn't. You can silence a voice, but not a record. Outside, the courthouse plaza had transformed into a battlefield of noise. Protesters on opposing sides chanted, their voices colliding in the humid air. Some carried signs reading "Justice for Crockett." Others held posters demanding her resignation. The tension was electric, pulsing through every shout, every flash, every broadcast feed cutting lived to the scene. When Jasmine finally stepped outside, microphones swarmed around her like insects. "Congresswoman, are you under investigation? Do you plan to release the documents? Is it true you accuse sitting members of Congress of corruption?" Her lawyer attempted to intervene. "No comment at this time," but she lifted her hand. "I'll speak," she said. The crowd fell still. She looked straight into the nearest camera, her expression calm yet unyielding. "The truth doesn't need permission to be heard," she stated. "I didn't create the storm. I just stopped pretending it wasn't raining." A murmur rolled through the crowd, and before anyone could press further, she turned and walked toward the waiting vehicle. Inside the car, silence enveloped her. The driver remained quiet. Her lawyer stared at his phone, scrolling through headlines that were already spreading like wildfire. Breaking: Crockett defies Supreme Court justice in explosive hearing. Documents expose alleged congressional payoffs. "I'll take the sentence proudly," says Jasmine Crockett. He exhaled. "They're going to come after you harder now," he said quietly. "I know you realize this could end your career." Jasmine turned her gaze toward the courthouse, disappearing behind them. The building stood like a monument, cold, unbending, yet somehow smaller than it had ever appeared before. "Maybe," she said, "or maybe it's just the beginning." Her lawyer frowned. "You think people will believe you?" "They already do," she answered. "They just needed someone to say it out loud." The car merged into traffic, swallowed by a sea of flashing lights and camera crews. From above, the city resembled a circuit board, alive, buzzing, dangerously connected. Inside that moving bubble of silence, Jasmine closed her eyes briefly. The image of Clarence Thomas's face, the flicker of recognition when he saw the evidence replayed in her mind. It wasn't triumph she felt. It was confirmation. He knew they all did. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't the one on the defensive. The hour-long recess meant nothing. The machine outside was already running. Headlines, editorials, debates, accusations. Her name was trending on every platform, dissected by pundits and praised by the public. But none of it mattered. Because for Jasmine Crockett, this wasn't about a headline. It was about drawing a line in the sand and refusing to step back, no matter who stood on the other side. She took a slow breath and whispered almost to herself, "Let them come." Outside, the rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the car roof like distant applause. The city blurred beyond the window. Somewhere inside that storm, a movement had begun. Quiet but unstoppable. And deep down, she knew that when the court resumed, nothing in Washington would ever be the same again. When the recess ended, the tension inside the courthouse had only intensified. Reporters who had managed to remain inside whispered updates into their phones, sending fragments of the case outside into every newsroom across America. The marble hallway buzzed with energy, but when Jasmine Crockett stepped back into the courtroom, everything fell quiet like a film scene fading from noise into silence. The crowd stood as Justice Clarence Thomas returned to the bench. His expression was unreadable, colder now, as though something inside him had hardened during the break. He didn't look at her immediately. Instead, he adjusted his robe, took a sip of water, and stared down at the document still lying before him. The same folder Jasmine had submitted an hour earlier. "Court is back in session," he said, his voice steady but clipped. The sound echoed off the high ceilings, bouncing between the pillars. Jasmine sat straight, her hands folded on the table. Her lawyer whispered, "He's going to come for you harder this time." She didn't answer. She just looked forward. During this recess, Thomas began, the court reviewed portions of Exhibit A submitted by the defense. The material contains allegations of corruption at the highest levels of government. He paused, letting the words hang. "These are serious charges, Congresswoman. If what you've submitted is false, it will constitute perjury and obstruction of justice." Jasmine met his gaze. "Then you'd better hope it's not false." A few people in the gallery gasped. Thomas's expression tightened. "This is not a game, Miss Crockett." "I am aware," she said evenly. That's why I brought receipts. He leaned forward slightly. You stand accused of defying lawful orders from Congress and leaking confidential information. Do you deny these actions? I do not deny sharing what the public had a right to know, she said, and I refuse to call the truth confidential. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Thomas raised his gavel. Order. He waited until silence returned, then continued. Congresswoman Crockett, you've made grave claims against sitting officials, including members of your own party. Are you prepared to provide testimony under oath? I already am under oath, she replied. And yes, I am. The judge nodded. Then proceed. Tell this court under oath who you allege is involved. Jasmine hesitated for a fraction of a second, not out of fear, but to measure the moment. Every camera in the room zoomed in. She took a slow breath. Senator Collins, Representative Fairchild, a handful of defense contractors who funneled money through PACs disguised as educational nonprofits. And she paused, eyes flicking briefly toward Thomas. A member of the judiciary who helped suppress investigations into those payments. That line landed like a thunderclap. The courtroom exploded in noise. Reporters shouting, security moving forward, her lawyer half rising from his chair. Thomas's hand struck the gavel hard. Order! Order in this court, he thundered. But Jasmine didn't flinch. Thomas's voice shook slightly as he spoke again. You will withdraw that last statement, Congresswoman, immediately. With respect, Your Honor, she said calmly, the statement stays. The truth isn't up for negotiation. The gallery fell into stunned silence. Thomas's face hardened, his jaw working as though he were holding something back. You are dangerously close to contempt, Miss Crockett. Then you'll have to hold me in contempt for telling the truth, she said. For a second, even he couldn't find a response. The power dynamic in the room had shifted subtly, but unmistakably. The judge who once commanded the entire courtroom now looked cornered by a woman who refused to play by his script. Thomas finally exhaled. This court will strike that accusation from the record. You can strike words from a transcript, Jasmine replied softly. But not from history. The audience murmured again, and this time no amount of gavel banging could erase what they'd heard. Her lawyer leaned closer, whispering under his breath, Jasmine, he's furious. Don't push him further. She kept her eyes forward. It's not about pushing, it's about not backing down. Thomas cleared his throat and tried to regain control. Let's be clear, Congresswoman. This hearing is not about your allegations. It's about your defiance of lawful authority. You were subpoenaed to turn over communication records related to a classified committee report. You refused. Explain why. Jasmine looked down for a moment, then back up. Because that report wasn't about national security. It was about political security. It was written to protect donors, not citizens. Thomas frowned. That's an extraordinary claim. It's an extraordinary cover-up, she shot back. He studied her, the corner of his mouth twitching, as though fighting an impulse to respond emotionally. Instead, he turned to the clerk. Mark that last statement as non-responsive. Then turning back to her, do you understand that if you continue refusing to cooperate, this court may recommend criminal prosecution? I understand perfectly, she said, but you can't jail the truth. Thomas leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. You sound more like an activist than a member of Congress. Maybe that's the problem, she said quietly. Too many members of Congress stopped being activists for the people who sent them there. That line hit the room like a sermon. Even a few reporters paused their typing. Thomas's tone dropped lower, colder. Do you believe you are above the law? No, she said. I believe the law should protect the people, not the powerful. He held her gaze for several seconds, neither blinking nor speaking. It was less a legal exchange now and more like a duel, one that neither could walk away from without consequence. Finally, Thomas looked down at the folder again. Congresswoman, I've read the first few pages of your so-called evidence. If even a fraction of this is true, it could trigger congressional inquiries, resignations, maybe indictments. Jasmine nodded. Then I've done my job. He looked up sharply. And if it's false, then I'll take the fall, she said without hesitation. But if it's true, then maybe it's time others did too. Silence again, a long, heavy silence that filled every corner of the room. The judge's eyes flicked toward his clerk, then to the court reporter, then back to her. It was as if he were weighing the cost of every next word. Finally, he said, "This court will adjourn until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. The contents of Exhibit A will be sealed pending review." Jasmine immediately stood respectfully. "Your Honor, sealing the evidence only proves my point. The people have a right to see it." Thomas's gavel came down hard. "This is not a debate." "Congresswoman," she didn't move. "Maybe it should be." The gavel struck again, adjourned, but the echo of her words outlasted the sound of the gavel. As guards escorted people out, reporters rushed toward the exits, already calling their producers. Her lawyer packed the files quickly, muttering, "That's it, you've lit the fire." Jasmine gathered her papers slowly. "It was already burning, I just pulled the curtain back." Outside, the crowd had grown tenfold. News vans lined the streets. Protesters held signs reading, "Let her speak and end the cover-up." Helicopters circled above like vultures, capturing the moment from every angle. When she stepped out again, the roar was deafening. Microphones thrust toward her, flashes relentless. "Congresswoman Crockett, are you accusing Justice Thomas directly? Do you have evidence linking the judiciary? Are you afraid for your safety?" She paused at the top of the courthouse steps. Rain still fell, washing the marble in streaks of silver. Her hair clung slightly to her shoulders, but she didn't move to fix it. "I'm not accusing anyone," she said finally. "I'm just revealing what the record already shows." The crowd erupted again, shouting questions. But she walked down the steps slowly, deliberately, the same calm rhythm she'd had that morning. Only now the ground beneath her felt different. Her lawyer caught up beside her, voice low but urgent. "They'll come after you tonight. You know that, right? Every network, every office, every donor you've ever crossed." Jasmine's eyes stayed fixed ahead. "Then I guess it's going to be a long night." In the distance, sirens wailed, part police, part news convoys. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, flickering red, white, and blue like a distorted flag. For a brief second, she looked back at the courthouse, the symbol of power she just challenged. And though she knew the real battle was only beginning, there was something steady in her voice when she finally spoke. "You can hide behind the law," she said softly, "but not forever." Then she stepped into the car, the door closing behind her with quiet finality. Inside, the silence returned, but it was no longer heavy with fear. It was the silence of momentum, of inevitability, and somewhere deep inside her, Jasmine Crockett knew the next time she walked into that courtroom, she wouldn't be the one on trial. If you found this breakdown of one of the most explosive political confrontations in recent memory compelling, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our in-depth coverage of the moments that truly matter in Washington. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think Jasmine Crockett exposed the truth, or did she cross a line? Let us know what you think and stay tuned for more coverage as this story continues to unfold.